The San Francisco 49ers have had a good past 3 years. You think about it this way: three straight NFC Championship game appearances, a Super Bowl appearance mixed in, and a heartbreaking Super Bowl loss mixed in. And you're talking about, two NFC Championship game losses where you could make the argument that they maybe should have won both of those games, both against the Giants in 2011 and against the Seahawks this past season. So the San Francisco 49ers have been doing a lot of things right in recent years. And part of the reason for that over the years, and the reason they find themselves in the position that they're in, is because of the NFL draft. Now, with that said, a lot of the 49ers draft success came before 2011. It did. It came with the guys like the Upatis and the Anthony Davises of the world, the Vernon Davises of the world, the Patrick Willises of the world, the Navarro Bowmans of the world. You know, a lot of these guys were drafted before the current regime was really put into place. So now with that said, the 49ers, I think, find themselves in a position where they have a lot of talent in place, but their recent draft history hasn't been all of that good. So their window of opportunity to win a championship, I think, is a little bit smaller than people may realize, unless they adjust and unless they do a good job in this 2014 NFL draft, and the sky could potentially be the limit. When you look at the recent draft history, let's say over the past 3 years, 2011 obviously was a really good draft for the 49ers. They got, you could say what you want about them, and even I wasn't a big fan of Aldon Smith coming out of Missouri. I was wrong, and he has been definitely a big time impact player for them. It's a shame that he can't right his ship off the field, because on the field, he is a true one dimensional pass rushing force. But then to be able to sit there and get your franchise quarterback, your Colin Kaepernick, in round number two, think about that. You get an impact player on defense, and you get your starting quarterback long term on offense in the same draft. That's a pretty damn good thing. The problem is that when you look at the 49ers over the past couple of years, some people will sit there and say, well, they basically almost draft these guys as red shirts, and these guys, because they have a talented roster, don't have to contribute right away. Yeah, that's true to a degree. However, that could also be used as a mask to hide the deficiencies and the failures of the past couple of drafts. In particular, 2012. That was one pretty big miss for the San Francisco 49ers. They really haven't gotten much out of that draft class at all. And when your first round pick in 2012, A.J. Jenkins, a year and a half later, is no longer with the organization, that is not good. That is disastrous. That means you basically have taken an entire draft class and gotten nothing out of it. And seasons like 2014 and 2015 are when you could potentially start to feel the impact of that. And you look at their 2013 draft, they had a lot of picks. They took a lot of big gambles. You guys like Tank Carradine and Marcus Lattimore. Those guys could recover from their injuries and become big-time future contributors, or they could not be. Are they going to get more out of guys like Lemonnier and Quentin Patton? It all remains to be seen. Again, these are guys, they got something out of Eric Reid. There's no question about that. But other than that, a lot of these red shirt picks, and like I said, that can only be used as a defense mechanism for so long. The bottom line is the San Francisco 49ers need to find more impact out of the 2014 draft. Because if they don't, they're not really growing, they're not improving. And if you're not improving, ultimately, you will stay the same or you will slowly die. The good thing for the San Francisco 49ers is, as an organization, they find themselves in a tremendously powerful position in this upcoming NFL draft. They have their first round pick. They have two second round picks, including the one from Kansas City for the Alex Smith deal. They have two third round picks, thanks to the draft day trade they had last year with Tennessee when they moved up to get Justin Hunter. They've got a fourth round pick, a fifth round pick, three seventh round picks. A total of 11 selections for the 49ers in this 2014 NFL draft. They have a lot of draft pick currency, and the great thing, what I really like about this organization, is they have a very aggressive attitude, and they have an aggressive attitude when it comes to the NFL draft, and I do like that. And I think they're going to need that attitude here in 2014, because I believe they need to have an all-in aggressive strategy for this year's draft. They need to find two or three real day one impact contributors. Not somebody that's going to contribute 2 or 3 years down the road. They need to find big-time impact players right here, right now. When you look at the team needs for this organization, I say the biggest ones are wide receiver. You might sit there and say, well, they've got Bolden, they've got Crabtree, yes, but they could use another option at wide receiver, either a shorter kind of quick twitch athlete in the slot, or they could use a big physical red zone target. They could definitely use help at cornerback. No more Carlos Rogers. They need somebody there. They spent a first-round pick last year on Eric Reed. They moved up to get him. I'd be surprised if they didn't spend an early pick on a corner this year. I think they could use a little bit of an upgrade over Jonathan Goodwin at center on the interior of that line. This is an organization with 3 first-round picks in that offensive line. I could definitely sit there and justify them spending pick somewhere in the first 2 to 3 rounds on a center to find an upgrade long term to go with the guys like the Staleys and the Upatis and the Anthony Davises. They could also use some depth at outside linebacker, just linebacker as a whole. You've got Navarro Bowman coming off of that nasty leg injury. You've got Aldon Smith. Is he going to behave? Are you going to be keeping him in the fold of the organization past this season? Who knows? But I think when it comes to the 49ers, I could advocate a couple of strategies for Trent Baalke and Jim Harbaugh as they kind of structure their draft philosophy and their draft strategy here. I could either sit there and say you use that draft pick currency that you have with your second and third round picks, the multiple picks that you have, and you get multiple first round picks. Like you trade a second and a third and maybe a fourth to move up into the 20s. And still keep your pick at 30, and then maybe take the other second, the other third, and maybe a fifth to move up somewhere else into the 20s or into the very, very bottom of the draft. I could advocate the 49ers taking that approach and maybe ending up with 3 first-round picks in this draft and saying, screw the depth. You don't need the depth. You need stars. You need impact players. Or I could sit there and advocate the San Francisco 49ers being incredibly aggressive and making a huge, big move up the draft board, which is what I think they could be potentially looking at doing. Trading up as high as anywhere between number 11 to where Tennessee is at, or really getting ambitious and really wanting to get nuts and trading up somewhere into the top 7 to 8 picks to try and get their hands on somebody like, let's say, a Mike Evans out of Texas A&M. The bottom line is the San Francisco 49ers can't sit there to me and keep most of these picks and just have another redshirt draft. It just doesn't work, and that's not going to make this team better, and it's not going to help them get over the hump in the same division, in the same conference where they face off with the Seattle Seahawks a couple of times a year. The San Francisco 49ers need difference makers. They need impact players, guys that can help get them over the hump, get them past Seattle, and help them win a Super Bowl. This is the time for the 49ers to be able to do this. This is the time for them to accomplish it. This will be one of the teams I'll really be watching for this 2014 NFL Draft come next week, because if they do sit there and they do get aggressive and they get those 2 to 3, even if I said just 2, one on offense and one on defense, real impact players, then this might be the favorite not only in the NFC, but all of the National Football League to go ahead and win Super Bowl 49.